Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we're going to be talking to one of the most underappreciated and yet most influential communities on the planet. That's next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, if you looked at any company and you said, who's the most influential person in the company, some people might say the CEO. I would beg to differ. I think it's the executive or administrative assistant to the CEO, because he or she has the ear of the CEO. To talk about that today, the folks behind Lumini Network, Sean Magennis and Jackie Ludwig. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, tell me more about Lumini, because I think this is absolutely a genius idea. You have chosen to bring together all of these very influential people who are kind of off the radar screen. Jackie, you want to start?
Sure. We have come together. Sean and I have been together for 8 years. I supported him as his EA in his previous role, and we just kept thinking, because Sean has been a member of many peer-to-peer communities, and together we understand the power of a peer-to-peer community. And I always, as an EA, was looking for that, but not quite. I can find a lot of really good training and a lot of seminars, conferences, but not that peer-to-peer community globally or even nationally. There just wasn't anything. So Sean and I, we were talking one afternoon, and we just, well, why don't we create one? So here we are. We did.
Well, Sean, I think this is absolutely brilliant. And you've been on my show before, and you at one point led YPO, a global organization of entrepreneurs. But you would not have been as successful as you are without Jackie. So let's talk about that.
100%. And Jackie's very modest. You know, when Jackie came to work with me at YPO, I was trying to manage my life across 24 time zones. I had 15 committees that I supported. I had, 9 direct reports.
9 direct reports.
And I was in a meeting from 7 a.m. in the morning till 7 a.m. at night, half an hour on the half hour. Very little time even just to get up and walk around. It was literally non-stop. And so, you know, Jackie brought a dimension of organization to the chaos. The first thing that Jackie recommended we do, in those days she was recommending, now she tells me what to do, Jeff. But Jackie recommended, let me take over your calendar. And I'd been very guarded with my calendar, I would say before.
Guarded.
And I'd mess everything up. I would take meetings, trying to do that. So a simple thing like having, the trust to hand over my calendar literally transformed my life in many ways. We also worked very close together, literally between a glass partition. And so, having that ability to communicate and do different things anyway, it was a life changer.
Wow. You wrote a very popular blog item. We're going to put it up on the screen. CEOs waste 18 hours per week in low-quality meetings. And you've gotten countless clicks and shares on that. Jackie, why don't you explain that? Why is it that CEOs are wasting 18 hours a week?
CEOs are often called into every meeting. Everyone needs the CEO there to make a decision. I know, as an example, with Sean's 9 direct reports, he was scheduling 1-hour one-on-ones with each of them every single week. So 9 hours a week of just in-house meetings. The meetings would easily devolve into a chat fest because there wasn't an agenda, there wasn't any real structure. So we suggested an agenda. Here, come to the meeting with an agenda. If I would reach out, hey, do you have your agenda? I'll make sure Sean gets it before the meeting. If they didn't have it, let's push it back just a little bit or push it till tomorrow. give you time to get that agenda together. You know, they get the panic face, suddenly the agenda comes right through your email. So with the agenda, they were able to go through very succinctly the different items within the department, the decisions, everything that needed to be brought to Sean's attention. And then we found that the meetings, we were able to cut them down from 1 hour to just half an hour a week. So here, Sean, here's 4.5 hours a week right there.
And I think it got out of control with the pandemic, because all of a sudden a
Even
Zoom meeting,
more so.
Even
I'll
more
just
so.
take a Zoom meeting, and then you take a meeting for half an hour and an hour, and you say to yourself, why did I just take that meeting? I'll
Exactly
never
right.
get that hour back.
And then the quality of the meetings improved. Because you've got an agenda, there always had to be an outcome to the meeting. The right people had to be in the meeting. Preparation in advance of the meeting was so important. And this is a real skill set that Jackie has, was that every meeting I was in, I was prepared. I would often have a little binder. If I was going overseas, for example, and I was attending a board meeting, which typically lasted 3 days, with dinners, with multiple things going on, Jackie would prepare it as if I was getting a briefing, almost military in nature. But that enabled me to quickly be able to pivot. And it was in three different types of communication. I had paper, not a lot of paper, but enough paper in case, my cell phone wasn't, up to date, or there was a battery issue. So I had cell phone, I had paper, and I had computer.
Brilliant.
With everything, every last detail. We teach a mechanism, for example, to our EAs in the community to help them manage travel and entertainment. And, when a busy executive is traveling, the last thing they want to do is arrive at a place. They don't know who's picking them up, what time they're being picked up, what the alternatives are if the individual doesn't show.
Yes.
All of that can be done in advance. So all of those, would we call them hacks, those special things that you do, comes from experience. We have a lot of members who are new EAs, serving a CEO or an executive who may have had a really great EA relationship in the past.
Yes.
And they have to get up to speed. The world has changed. You've got disruption. You've got lack of paper today, so somebody has to be digitally proficient and savvy. And then there's just the human side of what we do. We had an example with one of our members a couple of weeks back where the executive's mother passed away. That may sound like an innocuous and somewhat personal thing, but having a community of people to rally around this executive, share from experience, give her a virtual hug, walk her through all of the implications of that, powerful.
Yes.
And then we get the practical, which is, how do I keep all of these balls in the air at the same time for an executive that's going a mile a minute? Trust, and we'll hopefully deal with that in a little bit, but the trust element that grows between you if it's done right, because the EA is hearing everything that happens in the organization, not just from their CEO, but at the water cooler, and they're not often recognized for how they handle that degree of trust.
We're going to put benefits of membership up on the screen and let you talk about that, Jackie. What is included in the
membership?
Yes.
So as a Lumini member, the first thing we do is we put you in what we call a Lumini circle. So that's a group of 8 to 10 EAs or 8 to 10 AAs. We meet once a month for 90 minutes, and we'll go through a methodology. We have a methodology for each month. So we'll go through a methodology, it'll be delivered to you, explain it, any questions, and then you go off and you and your executive use that methodology together, and that there's a scorecard attached to it. You use that for a month, you come back the next month, and then we talk about it. What worked well, what didn't work well. I wasn't able to get my executive to do this. How did you, because yours is doing it with you, what did you do?
Yes.
How did you convince your executive that you needed an AA? I need one, kind of thing. So they problem solve real time in the circle. Then we roll out the following month's scorecard and methodology, and it just rolls that way through the full year. In the first month, we have what we call a role model report card, which essentially is 33 metrics or 33 competencies that in a perfectly perfect world, you would score yourself highly on every single item. None of us do that because we just aren't. And so you score yourself and your executive scores you. And it becomes a conversation starter for the two of you. you'll find that you've scored yourself low on something and your executive will say, no, you do that really well. I like the way you do that. Don't change it. So, oh, good, check. Don't have to work on that. Or there might be something that, we really don't do this well. How can we improve that? So it just kind of is a benchmark for the year. At the end of the year, we come back to that same role model report card. We add 11 more metrics based on what we've learned. And then you compare year on year to see how much that partnership has grown and tightened over that 12-month period.
And Sean, I guess the networking alone is worth the membership, just because I think it's a fairly lonely job. Not everybody can identify with the role of an executive assistant. So talk about how important that is to find your community.
Yeah, so that is the beauty of a peer group, is you get social learning, where you learn from each other. Problem solving. Where do you go as an EA to find something that's pertinent to your role? Well, another EA. Mm-hmm. Where do you go to grow and learn and be mentored? Jackie had a very, very seasoned career as a career EA before I stole her out of a company. And I'm delighted that she joined me. But Jackie brought this wealth of experience working in professional services, working in very high-end luxury goods, came to work with me
right.
At YPO. And I was the beneficiary of all the relationships that Jackie has. So when we need something, actually the first people we go to is, I say to Jackie, tap into your community. Mm-hmm. Tap into the EA community. If you need a Texas Longhorn sent to Europe from Texas, Jackie knows who did it, what it cost, what were the pitfalls, and how did we bring it back alive? And that's not a joke.
Somebody's done that.
Even the thing that comes to my mind is boundaries. If the CEO is asking for you to pick up their kids from school or dry cleaning every day. I mean, Jackie, can you speak to that?
Yep.
Sure. A lot of that is dependent on the individual relationships, but if you are new to the role, either new to the EA role or new to the CEO-EA partnership, how do you set those boundaries? By having that peer-to-peer community, you can reach out, hey, my executive is looking for me to do this. Has anybody had that experience? And if you have, help me, walk me through what you did. Where did you draw the line? How much did you do for them?
Yes.
What was the best way to handle that? And there's someone out there that has already done that, so just ask.
Negotiating those boundaries up front.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the things in our role model, when we do the onboarding, we encourage the EA and the CEO to sit together. The relationship only works as effectively as ours when you're both in it. It can't be do this, do that. We just found that didn't work for us.
Yes.
And the relationships that really work, that we've seen, and the CEOs and EAs in Lumini, they collaborate. They're a partnership.
And that shipping that Longhorn, was that actually a personal?
Well, no, we know somebody that
we
did
did,
that.
but we do know somebody that did that.
And a lot more than that.
We're going to put up on the screen a year in the life of a Lumini member, because it's a very active schedule, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 12 methodologies and 12 scorecards. We do things with communication, with relationship building, calendar management. The executive hands over his calendar, which can be very stressful for an executive.
Yes.
It can be very stressful. But once they see the benefit of handing that over, they buy in really quickly. We look at email, we look at resources, travel and entertainment. We just go through quite a number of things.
Security, which is so big today.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because typically the EA would have access to all of the passwords, the bank account, the personal information.
Right.
So when an EA signs up, by the way, they sign up to a code of confidentiality. We've taken it to a very high level. We use Chatham House rules, which is an international standard. And so if an EA is sharing an issue or a circumstance they need help on, there's no names, there's no telephone numbers, it's contextual, but you leave all the detail out. And if somebody breaks that, we disinvite them from the community.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so let's give you both a final thought, starting with you, Sean.
Well, I've been the beneficiary of such extraordinary help, and I feel strongly that the role of the EA in partnership with the CEO is probably one of the biggest force multipliers and efficiency gains that any executive can have. There's a lot of research and papers that have been written on it. It's not only time-saving, but it's really helping you be the best you can by having somebody who is your right hand. And I would encourage any executive out there to seriously consider the gift of development, of support, and of a peer group for their EAs.
Yes. Jackie, final word.
I think just that executive EA partnership, they can be very, very strong, and they're very effective. Not everyone knows what the EA knows, and she is such a benefit, she or he is such a benefit and such an advantage to the CEO. Just every little thing. This one's having a baby in the office, and the CEO knows that. How do you know that? I do.
Wow. That is so cool. You guys have been great guests. We're going to have you back again soon. We're going to end by putting the website up. LuminiNetwork.com is the website. Jackie, Sean, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
You
Thanks
bet.
so much for having us.
And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.